Hey there, it's Jen for Hip Kit Club, and today I am going to share some cards with you. We were challenged with this week's sketch to make 3 cards, and so I've pulled out some items from the kits that will work well for cards, I think. Specifically, this pattern paper from Jen Hadfield, This Is Family, has a lot of good 3x4 cut-aparts that would work well for cards. So I thought about that. And then also this Truly Grateful Phrases pad has some good things for cards as well. I personally love using stamps on cards, and so I am going to try incorporating those too. And then I just have some papers that I fussy cut for another layout that I thought might be fun to add on cards, and then the cardstock kit as well. I pulled out the stencil. I'm not sure that I'll use it or not, but this is from the color kit, and we will see about that, and maybe some Dear Lizzie stickers, but I'm not sure on that either. Just pulling out things that might work. I may pull in other things or not use what I've pulled here. So I'll just talk you through the process.
So I've gone ahead and cut down the Basil Marshmallow cardstock that came in the cardstock kit to some card front sizes. I am using 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, and I'm going to do them all vertically. And I pulled some of those little 2x2 squares out of that Truly Grateful paper pad, and I'm going to start with this card first, where I'm going to use some of the flowers that I had fussy cut from a previous layout with this happy day little I guess I want to call it a tag, but it's really not, little square. And I kind of went back and forth a little bit because the bright pink on there doesn't quite match the flowers, but I feel like in the end it works fine, and I'm going with it. So what I'm doing here is I am cutting down the card front by 1/4 inch, and I'm going to mount it to a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 inch piece of that yellow cardstock that comes again in the cardstock kit. And at this point I decided it would be cute to have a stitched edge. I have a lot of stuff on my desk right now, and my sewing machine is kind of shoved behind all of it, and so this faux stitching little stamp set, or these little stamps that are a Hip Kit exclusive this month, are perfect. So I'm just going to do black because I like the contrast. And I'm using a sticky note to just mask off the edges so I can make it look like I sewed in a square and it doesn't go off the edge. So pretty simple. And I'm just lining it up. And I don't care if it's perfect, because when I stitch, it's never perfect. So if it's not perfect, then that's just even more of a lifelike kind of look. I did smudge it at the top there, you can kind of see. I'm going to take my Tombow sand eraser and kind of get some of the smudge off. Basically that just sands off a layer of the paper, and it works really well on white cardstock, but I will end up covering it up with my flower, so it ends up not mattering. So I want there to, because the sketch has basically a photo and then it's surrounded by leaves, I'm going to make each card have kind of a center focal area with stuff around it. So on this one, it's going to be that happy day surrounded by the flowers. And I'm just going to glue those down, and I'll cut off the edges of the other flower a little bit later. I'm going to rough up the edges with my fingernail of that 2x2 card, and then I'm thinking about what I want to do for embellishment. I'm not exactly sure, but I thought it would be fun to have some of this Cocklebell's Magicals powder as kind of like, I want to splatter it. My water brush was not working well to splatter, so I just grabbed another brush and a little bit more pigment, and I'm going to just splatter that around, and I like the way that looks. I like simple cards with a little pizzazz. So I had a bunch of this liquid left over, and so I decided for my next card that I would just use that to create a watercolor background. I wasn't loving this, and so I grabbed, actually that's the back of the stamp set packaging, and I am just kind of putting the color down with that. I'm going to dry that so that I can well, first of all, I'm just lazy, so I like to dry it, but I thought about maybe after drying it, adding some more layers of the color, but I decided to just splatter on top and call it good. To be honest, this is not my favorite background or my favorite card, but it's done and it works. And I think the final card turns out pretty cute. So the next thing I'm going to do is I wanted to use some of the vellum that comes in the kit. And before I do that, I'm kind of still thinking about what I want to do with the vellum and how I'm going to use it. So I'm going to stamp some flowers. And I wanted to stamp the flowers in different colors than what the flowers are on those pattern paper pieces that I cut out. So I'm going to use blue for my flowers, and I'm just using a couple different colors of blue that I have in my stash, and I'm going to use kind of like a greeny blue for the leaves. And then after I did this, I kind of felt like it wasn't, I don't know, it wasn't quite enough. I'll stamp the outline in some black ink, and it does a lot for it. You can see that there. I'm going to add some yellow to the centers, and I got lazy and just used an old Prima chalk ink to kind of dab some yellow in the centers, and I think those look good, but I decided to add more color using some brushes, and so I'm going to just do some ink blending on top, and I'm just adding some more color to the flowers. So you can still see, like where I stamped, it's a little bit darker, and then I just have the lighter ink blending on top, and I think that it turns out well, and I'm happy with the way that looks. I added a little bit more yellow there, and then I'm going to fussy cut these out. And for some reason I didn't speed up the process of me fussy cutting these out, but I think that if you want to do this ink blending, you could totally just stamp the outline and then put some ink in the centers if you don't want to stamp the middles, but I like the effect that you get when you do both. I think it would also look nice if you kind of watercolored the background and then stamped on top of it, like if you watercolored in yellow and then stamped on top of it in a pink color or something, that would look really nice too. So I'm trying to just see if there's anything on these Dear Lizzie stickers that will kind of go with or match this card that I've got kind of brewing in my mind, and I decided to take off just the thank you from one of those cut apart cards, and I'm fussy cutting around that too. Sorry that it's a little bit out of frame, but I like the blue and I think it will tie in nicely with the blue flowers, and so I'm just cutting that. You can see as I'm cutting that I am moving the paper and I'm not really moving the scissors. That is the key to fussy cutting, I feel like. It does take a little bit of practice, but it goes pretty quickly once you've done it for a while. So I like the way that the blue looks on top of the pink, but I wanted to have some vellum. And so I'm going to cut the vellum down to, I think it's, let's see what I do, 5 by 3 3/4, so that it will have a nice border around it. And then I'm going to line up all of these faux stitches onto my little stamping press here, and I'm going to stamp those with Versamark ink, and I'm going to heat emboss them in white. So I'm just going to ink it up, stamp it down, and I kind of made them so that they go, they're not all lined up, and then I will stamp them on both sides. Sorry for my hair, crazy hair. And then I'll go ahead and dump the embossing powder on top so I can see if there's any spaces that I need to still fill in with a little bit more stamping. So there are a few spaces, so after I sprinkle it on, I'm going to stamp a few more times before I heat this. And these are not perfect, and I'm fine with it. I could have done a better job, but I didn't, and it's cool. So I'm going to put my embossing powder back, and now I am getting my heat gun hot before I bring it to the vellum. I don't want the vellum to warp too much, and so if you make sure that your heat gun's really hot before you bring it to the vellum, that helps because it has less time, like the heat gun has less time on it, if that makes sense. So I'm going to go ahead and place that down, and I know that I want to put my little flower on a circle in the middle. Again, I'm going with that kind of center element with stuff around it. And so I'm going to place my adhesive behind that circle. So I start by just adding my background to a card base, and I used a lot of adhesive so I could glue that down because that did warp because of all the water I put on it. And now I'm going to add some foam to the back of my circle, just using some fun foam that I had in my stash. And then I'm going to glue that on first, and then I'll flip it over and put adhesive behind the circle so that I know that the adhesive will be hidden. And if you wanted to, you could use some liquid adhesive behind the embossed portions to help with that too. So now I'm going to go ahead and glue down the thank you. I'm just having it kind of overlap on the flowers, and then I felt like it was a little bit too far to the right, so I moved it over. And now I'm trying to decide what else I want to add to this, and I thought some kind of pinky red hearts would be nice. And I'm adding these. When I create a trio of cards for this is strictly for photography purposes, but I like them to kind of coordinate a little bit. And or that's a good idea too if you want to give away a set of cards to somebody like a teacher or something like that. It's a great gift for teachers because I feel like they probably use cards a lot. I don't know. Anyway, so I like them to match. So I wanted to bring in a little bit of this color to tie it into the flowers on the first card. And so I just stamped that tiny little heart and fussy cut it out. And now I'm trying to think if I want to add a little phrase sticker underneath the word thank you, but there wasn't really anything that went with it. And so I am going to set this card aside, and I'll come back to it a little bit later with some more details. So I'm coming back to the first card now and just trimming off the edges, and I'm going to go back. Now I'm going to go to my final card. So I decided to use the stencil from the color kit and also the Lindy's Magical Powders from the color kit, and I'm using the gold, and I'm just going to add a bunch of the powder to my light modeling paste, and it's going to make it yellow, and I'm just going to scrape it through the stars part of the stencil. So this stencil is awesome because it has 3 different confettis, and it's really easy to just use one at a time if you're doing a masking job like this. And so you can see I just moved the stars around and I made them fill up the entire background that way, and it worked really well. And then I'm just going to go back in with the very tip of it to just add in a few stars here and there. Whenever I messed up, I just grabbed a piece of cardstock and scraped off the parts of the yellow that weren't right. And then I'm just scraping the rest of the modeling paste onto some yellow cardstock. I don't know if I'll use that or not, but there it is. So now I have some texture on some yellow cardstock. So now I am going to let that dry, and while that's drying, I'm going to figure out what I want to do on the rest of the card. I really liked this little 2x2 square that said, I think you are pretty amazing, and I thought it would look cute with that little blue button. And so I am going to think about what I might want to place this behind. And as I was searching through the 3x4 cards in the PL kit, I found this wreath, and I thought it would be cute to have that you are pretty amazing inside the wreath. So I just cut the wreath out, and now I'm going to go find a circle punch that I can punch out you are amazing with, and I'm going to use a 2-inch circle punch for this. And if you have a hard time getting, this is off camera kind of, but if you need like if your piece of paper is too small to fit in your punch, if you just use a scrap piece of paper and adhere the other paper to the edge of it, then you have kind of like a little handle, and it's easier to punch out of. So I punched it with a 2-inch circle punch, and it fits right in the wreath, which was nice. And then I'm threading my button, and I'm going to put that on top of the circle there. So I didn't actually use a needle and thread. I just put the thread through the button and put a glue dot on the back. So I really like the way that looks, and I'm thinking what can I put behind this, because I'm still trying to do that kind of center thing with the something bursting from behind it, kind of like the sketch had. And so I'm thinking about what I might want to do. I put a little word sticker below the word amazing, but it didn't quite look right. And so I looked at the stamps to see if there was something there that I wanted to add. And I decided to use the faux stitching once again. I'm going to use the little X's, and I'm going to heat emboss. So I'm just inking up just a little bit of it. And so it's going to look like I have some faux stitching just at the bottom of that. I spilled my embossing powder everywhere, so that was cool. But I'll pick it up in a minute. I keep a Swiffer cloth handy because it helps to pick up powders and glitter and different stuff like that. And so that's what I'm using to wipe off my surface there. So after I had that done, I thought I knew I wanted to pop this up, and so I will pop that up on foam. But first I'm trying to think of what I want to add behind it. And this Dear Lizzie sticker, so those Dear Lizzie stickers have like a holographic foil on the entire thing, and they're very pretty. And so I'm using that floral piece just as a little, I cut it in half so I could use the top half on something else possibly. But I'm just going to use it around so that it goes around the base of my circle. And then I will pop both of them up so you can see how it kind of fits around it there. And just making my foam fit there, and I will add it to my card. This light modeling paste, it dries pretty quickly, so I like that. Okay, so there we go. And it felt a little like heavy on the right, so I cut off one of the leaves, and I felt like it was a little better. So on this one, I felt like I just wanted a little bit more texture. I was pretty happy with it just the way that it is right now, but I wanted to add a little something. And so I am using a technique that I haven't done in ages, and I am tying some little bows with some white embroidery thread. It's like a thick embroidery thread, and I tied 3 bows, and I'm just kind of shoving them up underneath the base of those flowers, and it kind of gives like a little, it's not like messy, like a nested thread like Missy Whidden does, and it's not quite a bow, it's somewhere in between, and I really like the look of it. So I decided to cut it down about 1/4 of an inch on each side, and I'm going to mat it with some blue cardstock from the cardstock kit. And I like doing mats like this instead of having a border around the entire thing, but just having it on 2 sides. I like that look. And so I'm adding that to my card base there. And I'm trimming off the excess. Sometimes everything doesn't line up exactly. And I'm using my fingernails to just add a little bit of texture. And now I have my 3 cards. I'm going to add my first card to a card base. And I'm going to set out all 3 cards together and look at them to see what's missing or what I can do to make them feel like they belong together. That 3rd card on the left, it just doesn't feel right. And so I will add some stuff to it here in a minute. But I'm going to add some of these little puffy circles to the happy, happy, happy day card. And I'm going to take a minute to kind of decide where I want them. I don't know. I just struggled for a sec. I thought about adding those little puffy circles inside of those flowers, but I didn't like the way it looked. And I almost added the bird. I kind of like it. I don't know. I kept going back and forth, so I just took it off. But in the end, I only used those 3 puffy circles. So I'm looking again at these Dear Lizzie holographic stickers, and I'm trying to decide if I need to add in some more flowers with the flowers that are on that card, or what I need to do. And I kind of thought that I might add, I went back to the puffy stickers. I don't know. I was having a struggle. And then I decided I could add in some leaves that are from that patterned paper, and it would match the card, but it would also make it a little bit more playful like the other 2 cards. And I'm happy with the way that turned out. So I feel like that brings it to not another level, but to the same level as the other cards, I guess. I don't know. And then I'm going to add thread to all three, so that amazing card you saw me add the bows underneath the circle, and I'm going to do the same thing here on the thank you card. And then I will add some thread just tied around the center of the other cards. So again, I tied 3 little bows, and I'm just kind of shoving them up underneath that circle, adhering them with a glue dot, or you could use liquid glue. I'm just tying a 3rd bow here to stick up there. I feel like 3 gives a good amount of thread kind of hanging down. And then here I go. I'm wrapping some thread around this, and I decided I wanted it to wrap around twice, so I cut a longer piece, and now I'm just trying to get it in the right spot so I can tie a little bow, and the bow just sits right next to the title, and I'm really happy with that. So after I did that, these 3 cards are going to be complete. I have some close-up photos coming up of each card. Here's a look at that happy day card. Love that one. Here's the thank you card, and then the last one, you are amazing. And then here's a final look at all 3 cards together. I hope that you've enjoyed. I hope that you'll try this sketch. Be sure to head over to the Hip Kit Club Facebook group, and I'll have the group and products linked in the video description. Thanks for watching. We'll see you soon.